Welcome back to IamUgie. I'd like to apologize to those who've been following and keeping up with my videos, talking about my life. Um, After my last video, I'll just say life happens. Got caught up with things in life and kind of lost focus on the purpose of me making these videos. But I'll pick up where I left off at, and I was talking about going into the 10th grade. Excuse me. Going into the 10th grade. And so around this time of going into the 10th grade, I developed, how can I say, or I had already had it, but I had a deceitful personality. So being a foster kid, you walk in the house and you try to be on your best behavior. It's like, I think most kids do it anyway. You try to be on your best behavior when you're around your parents. But when you're not away from them, then as they say, your true colors come out. So one time before going into the 10th grade, one time I used to steal because I wasn't old enough to buy cigarettes and Black and Milds. I used to go to, it used to be a Kmart in Bedford off of Libby Road. It was in a Southgate Shopping Center. I think it was called Southgate Shopping Center. It used to be a Kmart there. And I would go there to steal like cigarettes and Black and Milds because they used to keep all the cigarettes and the tobacco stuff up front right after the cash registers. So I would go and buy something like a candy bar and then pay for the candy bar. As soon as I walk past the candy bar, I'll just walk right out, stick my hand out and grab a pack of cigarettes and keep on walking. Or grab a pack of Black and Milds and keep walking right out the door. One time I got caught though, and the one time I got caught, I never stole from a store ever since. But the loss prevention guy for Kmart caught me, and he asked me, well, who was I stealing the cigarettes for? And this and that. I said I'm stealing them for myself. And he just couldn't believe that at the time that I was a smoker, and that I smoked cigarettes and Black and Milds. And so he was like, well, I'm gonna call your mother. And I told him, I said, well, good luck on that. I said, she's dead. He was like, well, I'm going to call your dad. I said, well, good luck finding him. So he was like, well, who do you stay with? And I told him, I said, I'm in foster care. I live in a foster home. And I said, so I don't care if you call my foster mom or not. I said, it's not like I'm going to get a butt whooping. And he was just stunned and shocked, and so he asked me, he was like, why are you in foster care? So I told him, and I guess he had sympathy for me, and he was like, well, I'm gonna just let you go. And I asked him, I said, well, can I keep the cigarettes? And he said, no, you can't keep them. But from that time forth, I never stole from a store again. He didn't call my house or anything like that. He just let me go, and I never stole from a store, any type of store or place like that ever again. But I was still breaking into people's houses and breaking into businesses and doing stuff like stupid stuff like that, mainly out of, for me, it was exploring. That's the way I looked at it. I felt like I was exploring stuff. Even though it was dangerous, I could have, gotten shot for breaking inside somebody's house, and which I should have been caught. Because I can't, I can't stand criminals, and I think probably because I used to be one. But for me, I looked at it like exploring because I really wouldn't take nothing from nobody's house. I would just like to see how other people lived. It was like It was weird. I can't explain it. Um, I really didn't start taking and keeping stuff until I started breaking into people's cars. But that came later on down the line, and yeah, I was, do the basics. I breaking your car just to steal your stereo, your sound system, mainly drug dealer cars, because you can always spot them. They got the big pretty paint. Well, at least in Ohio, they got big pretty paint, big rims on their car, not loud sound system, and all I wanted was the speakers in the trunk so I could put them in, so I could have a stereo system in my room. But that came later on down the line. But um, from that point moving forward, I was just, I don't know, I was lost. I was just out there being out there. Um, I didn't have a job at the time, so it was like I wanted money. So me selling little crack rocks here and there, it was like, yeah, it's money, but it's not no money. It wasn't enough. How they would say, it's not enough clientele in the area. And plus the fact that I wasn't selling it for myself, so a lot of the money was going to the guy who I was selling for. And being young and dumb and not knowing any better, I needed money. So if I did come across like change or money in your house, then yeah, I would keep that. That was no questions about that. Um, but as time went on, I eventually got a job, and I worked at the Soft Touch Car Wash in Bedford. And I think it's still there today, but I do remember it burnt down like a year or two ago, 2023 or something like that. I don't know if they rebuilt it or not, but I used to work there at the Soft Touch Car Wash. And then that was my first actual job, being out of Belfair. And I went to school at Bedford High, still in the SBH classes. The classes kept all the way in the back, in the corner of the school next to the shop classes, because so don't nobody else look at the special needs kids. But or the severe behavior habit kids. But I no longer rode the short bus at that time because I had to walk to school, which was literally a straight shot down the road from Libby Road, on the corner of Libby Road where we stayed at, Stony Brook Apartments. But as I went to school, and I think it was my first period class was swimming, or swim class. And in swim class, there was this girl, and she was the first black girl I ever like dated, and she was my girlfriend and became my wife later on in life. But when I first saw her, I was just, we laugh about it now, but when I first saw her, I was like, all I could think about was seeing her in the little bikini or bathing suit, my apologies, bathing suit that the school gave them. And she out walking around, and I'm just like, man, wow, young, full of hormones and this and that. And I remember the guys in the locker room kept talking about, oh, I'm gonna get her. I'm gonna get her. And I said, no, you're not. I said, I'm gonna get her, and don't nobody else talk to her. And then they told me, they was like, well, she got a boyfriend already, and she dates some guy, some big tall guy named Daryl. And I was like, I don't care who she dating. I said, I want her, so I'm gonna get her. And if she like me, then I'm gonna get her. Simple as that. I don't care who she dating. Well, during that time, I was mean And I was especially mean to one of her friends. So she didn't like me. And I was just like, oh, well, there goes that. So I stopped paying attention to her in swim class and just kept doing my thing because I was an instructor to help other people to learn how to swim. So I was teaching other people how to swim, and she never wanted to swim. She would just stand in the corner of the pool. Well, I didn't know she knew how to swim, but she told them she didn't know how to swim because she didn't want to get her hair wet. So she always stood in the corner of the pool just sitting there, standing there. And she never got her hair wet until it came time to take the swim test. And then she showed everybody that she knew how to swim. So we switched gym classes. I, of course, kept going back to the swim class, choosing the swim class because I was never a guy or a kid who liked sports. And when I say sports, I never liked baseball. I didn't like football. I didn't like basketball. I didn't like softball. I didn't like none of that stuff. I don't know why. And I think maybe because my father used to like all that stuff. And because I couldn't really stand him, it caused me to have a dislike for it. I never understood the point of watching him and watching people sit there and yell at a TV screen saying, run, 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 or throw the ball. Like, he can't hear you. Like, why are you yelling at the TV? It's pointless. And then they don't score a touchdown. You get mad. And as a kid seeing my dad do all that stuff, I was like, he's crazy. It's like, I don't understand it. It's like, what's the point? Even people at the stadium. I've been to football games at stadiums. I've been to basketball games at stadiums, at gyms. And it's just not my thing. I could watch it, but I don't really get all into it. But because of that, I never signed up to play like basketball and stuff like that because it's boring to me. But she switched and chose to go to regular gym class. I stayed going to the swim class, and then once I seen she switched, I was like, oh well, that's the end of that, or end of her. And I next day I went to my swim class, and the class was over with. And when you're leaving the pool, you have to walk down a hall and walk past the actual gym. And I walked past the gym, and she was standing out there just waiting. And I said, what are you waiting for? She said, I was waiting on you. And when she said that, inside, being a young man, I melted. I felt like, oh man, this is awesome. I felt like the world, was mine. And I was so happy. And even though she technically still had a boyfriend then, it was cool. We were friends. But in my mind, I said, oh no, I'm pursuing her. So as time went on, I would do stuff like around like Valentine's Day would come up, and her boyfriend or people, the school used to walk around and sell carnations for $1. So her boyfriend bought her a carnation, I think, for like $1 or whatever. No, me, I was like, I'm a surprise this girl. So I bought a dozen of roses from this gift place in Southgate, and their roses were expensive, but I bought a dozen roses, and I would buy a teddy bear. I bought her a teddy bear. I would always buy her these expensive teddy bears from this place and a dozen of roses. Because I'm like, I really like her, and I want to surprise her, but it was so cold in Ohio that year that by the time I had walked from Libby Road to the high school, the cold weather had wilted the roses, and I was hurt. I was hurt, but she still took them, and she was surprised, and I got upset that day because I had got her those roses for her, and she turned around and started handing them out to like a few of her friends or whatever, or one of her friends or something like that. But I got mad. I got upset about it because I'm like, I got those for you. You don't know how much money I spent to get those for you. But yeah. So I met her. I met um, my girlfriend in the 10th grade, and she was still with her boyfriend. And as time went on, he got upset for whatever reason, A, B, and C, and yeah, they ended up breaking up, and me and her ended up talking, starting to talk or whatever. Um, Once that happened, I had stopped talking to Tanya, uh, because I would talk to Tanya randomly on the phone here and there. Um, but once that happened, once I started talking to her, that was it. It was just my world. It seemed like my world revolved around her. Um, so as time went on, and I would talk to her, it was like when it first started off, it was like everything my foster mom and foster sister, including her mom, they would try to separate us and keep us separated. Oh, she not good for you. Oh, he not good for you. Oh, this and that. Like she was like my sister just being protective over me. My foster sister being protective over me, which I love her for, by the way. But she could be a little rough. She was protective over both her actual brother and me. But you know, they was calling her like hoes and all types of stuff, and I'm like, she wasn't even that type of girl, you know. But uh, I found out that my spouse was dealing with a certain type of abuse by someone in her household, and that triggered me and angered me. So I had threatened, to harm the person that was causing her abuse in her household. And her mother didn't believe her. I took it to my foster mother, and I don't know what my foster mother did. I think she contacted somebody, but either way, nothing stopped it. So one day, me and my girlfriend, we had ran away, and I think we were 14 and 15 years old, or 15 or 16 years old. Can't remember the age exactly. But we were young teenagers, and yeah, we ran away, and she wanted to get away, and I was like, I have no problem with running away anytime. To me, it's just a house. It's just a roof over my head that's not Belfair. So going AWOL is fine with me. So she wanted to get away, and I said, "Oh, I know somewhere we could go." So I called my father, Smokey, Mister Weirdo himself, and he came and picked us up and took us over to one of his houses, and he left. And I think he went over his other wife's house, but he dropped us off at his house in Brainerd, because he had a house in Brainerd and he had a house in Shaker. And yeah, my father was just out there. So he dropped us off at the house at Brainerd and left us. Told us we could drink whatever alcohol we wanted, just don't tear up his house. Um, so that was fine. And then the what was weird though, and how sick my father was the next day. My father was came back to the house, obviously to check on us or whatnot, and my father uh was just, this is when I saw the true creepiness of my dad. So me and my girlfriend, we were in one of the rooms in our room, one of the rooms in the bed, and we're doing what teenagers do, full of hormones. I happened to look up, and my father was just standing in the doorway watching us. Like the door, he had cracked the door, and he was just standing there watching us do what we were doing. And I told her, I said, he's watching us. And she saw it. She was like, what in the world? And I said, told you something is wrong with him. And my father stood there watching us. And then he just walked off quietly, didn't say nothing, didn't do anything. And I was like, what in the world is going on with him? But he was a weirdo. And then he told my girlfriend at the time, he was like, hey, do you have any girls that like an older man? And she was like, no. And that's when she realized that, okay, something's wrong with him. And I kept trying to tell her, I was like, my father is off. And I was like, he's really off, because I warned her about him before I even introduced her to him. That I said, my father's not a good guy, but I'm not going to let him do anything to you. I wasn't going to let my father try anything and try to harm my girlfriend. But my father didn't never try anything, but he definitely did some weirdo activities and asked some weirdo questions. Um, but anyway, we get back to the house, and of course, all the police show up. Everybody show up, trying to figure out where we been. We never told them where we were at. Um, so for them, for years, that remained a mystery until now, until our parents or whatever listen. If they watch this video, then they'll never know still what happened or where we went that night. Um, but from that time forth, it was like her mama kept trying to keep me away from her, and keep her away from me, and vice versa. But as time went on, uh, my foster mother came and set me down, and she was like, hey, I got some questions to ask you. And I said, okay. It was just like a normal day. And she was like, we are going to move, but we are moving back to Shaker. How do you feel about that? And in my mind, I was just like, the F word, and but I thought I was, oh, I'm fine, I don't care. Knowing inside, that was like torment to me to move back to Shaker. So we ended up moving back to Shaker, and we moved off of Strathavon, which is like, if I remember correctly, it's like 3 streets over from Bedford. And once we moved into this house, it was like, I could not focus. I could not focus on nothing. It was like all the memories and stuff of things that a child shouldn't see and witness came rushing forth, and I lived in that area having to deal with that. So I found other outlets. Um, those outlets included me getting into a lot of fights with people, smoking a lot of weed, drinking a lot. I would do these things literally outside of the house, um, or I would go to my other. It feels weird calling her my stepmom, but I guess I would go to my stepmom's house and I would smoke with her, because at the time it was like she kind of like struggled with like not finding a good weed supply, and at the time I was selling weed, so I would go over there and smoke weed with her. Uh, I ended up talking back with Tanya, so I would catch the bus sometimes on the weekend and go see Tanya. Uh, yeah, I would come back, go to school. Nobody in school in Shaker, going to Shaker Heights High School, nobody liked me there. Um, I had no friends there. Uh, I would say I was the most hated, the most known and the most hated. I wore red every day going to school, um, to stand out, be different. I didn't care if nobody liked me. Um, I didn't care who you was. All I cared about was women and how can I get $1. I didn't care about school books. I didn't care about none of that. I used to cut school and I would go to 154th, which is like right on the border of Shaker and Cleveland, but I would go to 154th and Kinsman and literally hang out at Mr. V's, and I would sell crack at the corner of 154th and Kinsman at Mr. V's. And when it was slow, I would walk all the way down from 154th down to 131st and Kinsman and walk back, just doing what I do, trying to, make $1. One day in school, I got into it with, I can't remember this guy's name, but he was like a pretty boy, and back in the '90s, he reminded me of Genuine. That's what he looked like. Genuine had the curly hair. He had the body girls like, and he had this guy had all like the nice clothes, like the really nice clothes. Like back in the '90s, the hot thing to have was like the Averix jackets. So, he had the Averix jacket on, the Jordans and all that stuff. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, well, this guy's a mama baller. So that's what I used to call them, MBVs. All the people in Shaker, all the students in Shaker, basically, they were mama ballers. And they looked like, the regular teenager. It looked like he hustled, got the jewelry on, got the nice Averix jacket on, got this and that, but everything they got on, their mother bought them, and that used to burn me up because I'm like, nobody bought me an Averix jacket, nobody bought me no Jordans, even though I didn't like Jordans because everybody wear them. I didn't want to wear the same stuff the same shoes that everybody had on. So, but I was mad because he kept talking trash about me being smart one day uh, in the gym class, and we were in the locker room. And I told him, I said, you got one more time to say something smart to me, and I'm going to snatch you up out that jacket, and I'm going to keep it. So then he get all hyped, like, oh, you going to keep my jacket? You gonna keep my jacket? You going to take my jacket? That's what you saying? That's what you saying? So at that point, I'm like, we can get down now, but he didn't want to get down. He was like, no, I got something for you. I got something for you. So, like a mama baller does, or like a soft person does, they ran to go get their homies. So, you know, he ran and got his cousin, and I remember his cousin name. His cousin name was Matthew, but he went and got his cousin Matthew or Matt, and the rest of their little homies, and they all come around with all their colors, wearing all blue and all this other stupid stuff, But halfway through the school day, people kept coming up to me like, "Hey, I heard you gonna get jumped today." I was like, "That's what you heard?" I was like, "Well, I'm not concerned. I'm not worried about it." So I had a few people, or who I thought were, so-called friends, who said they would have my back or whatnot. So I wasn't really too concerned. The end of the day came, and this happened in the winter. It was the winter time, and the end of the day came, and or the end of the school day came, and I walked out to school, and I saw the dude, and he walked right out the door, like he scurried out the door real quick. But his cousin Matthew came up and approached me, and he said, "Look," he was like, "You're not gonna fight my cousin. It's not gonna go down like that." And I said, "Well, your cousin's a B word." And I said, he just proved his point because he had to go and get his cousin and the rest of y'all homies. I said, "But I'm not afraid of none of y'all." So he was like, "All right." He said, "Well, if you want this, come get it." So we walked out to school, and I'm thinking it's only going to be like, 2, 3 people. Because I'm like, I've been jumped pretty much my whole life growing up by people. I never really got the, as they call it, the fair one. Everybody always said that I was always too big to fight one-on-one, but I wasn't big. My shoulders are just broad, so I always look bigger than what I am, but when I turn sideways, I disappear. But I walked outside only expecting to see like a few people, and I counted, and it was 10 people they had. Well, I had 5 people with me, so count me, that was 6. Or I thought I had 5 people with me. So I wasn't concerned. I still wasn't scared. I'm like, we're going to walk around the corner. We're going to do this. So I'm thinking we're going to get down right here in front of the school. He's like, "No, let's walk around the corner." So I said, "All right, I'm down with that too." So we walk around the corner, and we go to the next street over, and we're in the snow. I'm the brightest thing out there in the snow in the wintertime. I had on red sweatpants, a red shirt, red hoodie, a red hat, and I believe I had on red and white, red and white Airborns? I think they were the Nike Airborns I had on, the red and white ones. And so I'm the brightest thing out there. Everybody can see me. And then you see me in this sea of blue. And that's all you see me in. And I'm sitting there, and his cousin, not his cousin, but the guy, I can't remember his name, but the guy in the Avirex jacket, the kid walks up to me. He was taller than me because they were all tall. And he said, "So what's up with that?" And before he could finish what he was saying, I socked him in his mouth as hard as I could. And the moment I hit him, next thing I know, I was getting swarmed. The people I thought were supposed to be my homies, that was supposed to have my back, they were jumping me along with the other 10. So I was getting jumped by 15 people in the snow on the side street in Ohio, in Shaker. So I would get slammed, and the moment I got slammed, I would bounce back up because I knew not to stay on the ground. Because I remember what happened to the guy who was getting jumped on Noble, and how when he went to the ground, he was just getting maxed out. So this was the wintertime, and in the 90s in Cleveland, people wore the Timberland boots and these boots called Durango boots. And sometimes people would get them with the spurs on the back or whatever. So I'm in the snow getting kicked with Timberland boots, getting kicked with Durango boots. I'm swinging on everybody. And I grabbed, I don't know who I grabbed, but I grabbed and scooped somebody and got him to the ground. And I choked him with my left hand. And I beat him in the face with my right hand. And I buried my face in his chest because I didn't want to get kicked in my chest. I didn't want to get kicked in my face. So I buried my face in his chest. And they just sitting there around just stomping me out while I'm on top. And I'm like, all right, well, until I black out, I'm going to keep punishing this guy on the ground. Well, obviously the people in the neighborhood, call the police. They're like, oh, there's a bunch of black folks out here fighting. Let's call the police. So the police came down the street and they were all fishtailing because the roads were really snowy and snowed over. And I jump up and I take off running, cutting through the backyards with my clothes all torn. Like I said, I had on red sweatpants. So wintertime, you on the ground squabbling. They're like muddy. They're wet from the snow. My shirt is torn, and I just look a hot mess. So I run back to the school, and I run to this. It was like an after school program. And I walked into the after school program, and I sat down at the computer, and I started doing just trying to blend in, doing homework or whatever. But everybody could tell something has just happened. Because I come back into school and I'm like, my clothes all torn and ripped up, but I was more concerned about my face. And I was like, okay, I'm not bleeding. They didn't, bust my nose. They didn't bust my mouth. I was like, I'm good. Whole time, clothes raggedy and just torn up. So before I know it, police come to the classroom door and they pulled me out the classroom and they're asking me what happened. And I said, I don't know. I don't know what happened. And what you mean you don't know what happened? Your clothes are torn. You look like you've been, in a squabble with a pack of hyenas. Like, what's going on? And I kept saying, I don't know what happened. Don't know what happened. Don't know what was going on. And I didn't say anything. And they ended up calling my foster mom. And then I had to go home. Obviously, it was the end of the school day. And I walked home. But literally, in the span of, I want to say, 20 minutes, I got home. And by the time I got home, word had gotten back all the way to the other side of town. That's how hated I was. To the other side of town that I had got beat up. Because I walked in the house and as I'm taking off my wet clothes, my torn up clothes, and I'm looking at them like, oh man, these guys ain't even do nothing. They soft. They ain't mess up my face or nothing. And the phone rings, and it's my girlfriend. And I said, hello? And she was like, I heard you got beat up. And I said, I'm like, what? I'm like, how you hear about this? I'm like, it just happened. I said, they just jumped me. And she was like, oh, you got jumped? I said, yeah, I got jumped. I said, I got maxed out by 15 people. I said, but they ain't do nothing. I said, because they soft. I said, I got a scratch on my back from where they were kicking me. I don't know if the guy hit me because he had the Durangos with the spurs on them or the Timberlands, but one of them shoes or boots gave me a nasty little scratch on my back. But that's all I had. I didn't have no broke ribs, no nothing. And but I was just shocked that she heard about it. I'm saying I literally just got home. It just happened. And she was like, well, it was going around school that you got beat up and this and that. So I was like, they ain't even do nothing to me like that. And so I was like, why don't you come by and see for yourself? So later on that night, she snuck over because she did used to sneak over a lot at night. But that went on, and then as time went on, there was a um, I know I'm trying to see which way I want to go with this. So, uh, another time, my foster mom had got this another foster child, and her name was Christy, and she was this light skinned girl, and she was from, I want to say 30th, but she was another foster child, and she was wild, and we were wild together, and being two teens full of hormones, we did what teens do, and but this is just a short story on her. She didn't like being in a foster care, or being in foster care. Neither did I. Um, she didn't like the fact that I wouldn't stop talking with my girlfriend to be with her. So she would do like stupid stuff and call my girlfriend and just do stupid teenage stuff. Oh yeah, he's mine and all this and yada yada yada. It was just stupid stuff. But eventually she left. Um, I was still using sex as my coping skill to deal with like my inner issues, and I felt like the hardships of my life. So I proud. I just looked for girls to talk to, and if a girl was willing to talk to me and do the do with me, then that's what I was going to do. I didn't care about nothing else. It was like, to me, women were toys, and they were just objects for pleasure, for fun. And unfortunately, that's the way a lot of us men and young men look at women, and we shouldn't, but that's the results of, no other way to put it. It's the results of sin. It's the results of sin. It's the results of hormones and how we grew up and the things that we see and the things that we watch. And for me, growing up, it was like I saw my brother with women. I saw my dad with multiple women. And then you had the music videos with women, NWA and all that in the 90s and stuff. So it was like sex is being pumped out into you. So, and then experiencing sex at a young age and being abused, I was a monster sexually. So, um, being a shaker, I talked to a lot of different girls, and even though I would, in their mind, they're like, "Oh, he really likes me. Oh, he's my boyfriend." In reality, no, you're just helping me to cope with the stuff inside that I don't know how to cope with, because this is my form of self harm for me. Um, but yeah, so that's how I was as a teenager, and living in Shaker. Uh, I was still trying to find myself. I was lost. Every girl that I met, it seemed like in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the right one. That's the girl I'm supposed to be with. And because it was like my girlfriend would do something to piss me off, so so I wouldn't feel bad. I would break up with her just so I could go sleep and mess around with this other girl, and then I'd come back and and then make up with her. It was like I was warped. um, but I would meet a girl, and I'm like, oh yeah, she's the girl for me. I like her, and this and that. And then she would either say something or do something to piss me off. And I'm like, what? I'm tired of this girl. And then, I'll stop the relationship with her and move on to the next and the next. And that was the vicious dating cycle for me during that time. I still maintained having bad grades because I didn't care about school. Half the time I was high, or I would cut class and sell dope on Kinsman. Or if I didn't do that, sometimes I would just be so depressed that I would wake up in the morning, pretend like I'm going to school, walk around the block and cut through the back house that was on the other side of our house and hide behind the garage and wait for my foster mother to leave to go to work. And when she would leave and go to work, I'd go right back inside the house, go back downstairs because my room was in the basement, and I'd go back downstairs to the basement and go to sleep. And I would set an alarm to wake me up, and I would get back up around like 2 o'clock and leave the house early to make sure I walk back up to the school, and then I would stand at the Van Aken rapid stop or train stop and wait for the rest of the students to come down walking home from school. Then I would walk home so that way it looks like I came home at a regular time, because sometimes she would show up at the same time that I was coming home, or sometimes, she would show up a little earlier and then I would be coming home from school. So it looked like I was going to school or coming home from school, but in reality, I wasn't. A lot of the times I would just sleep because I was depressed. I didn't want to do life and be awake. So sleeping was also a coping mechanism during that time. Um, I was still self mutilating and cutting myself with razors and burning myself with different objects, giving myself smiley faces with lighters, burning myself with nails. Uh, I used to mutilate myself in many different ways, but I would put it in spots to keep it hidden, so that way my foster parents, my foster mother, nor foster sister would really notice. Um, my foster mom would try to talk to me all the time, and she would try to tell me about God and reading the Bible and building a relationship. But it was like I would listen to her and just be like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, I got time. I don't know what you talk about. Okay, because after the stuff I had went through and dealt with mentally, it was like I didn't want to hear all that. I wasn't trying to hear all that. Um, I didn't really believe. But what she didn't know was in her basement was while she was um, telling me about God was that I was doing a witchcraft in her basement, setting up pentagrams in my room, because basically my foster brother had the room first, but he had built the basement to where it was like half the basement, basically almost the whole basement was his one big bedroom. And he lived down there until he had moved out. And once he moved out, I took over the room. But yeah, in their basement, I was down there, and yeah, had break out the candles and have pentagrams on the floor and all kind of stuff going on at night in the basement. I would turn my music on, let the music play, because my foster mom would be right upstairs, and I didn't want her hearing me down there, doing what I was doing. Um, as time went on, um, I would end up on the front page of the newspaper, the front page of the Cleveland Plain Dealer. And I think this happened in 1999, I want to say. I've been trying to find it in the archives. So if anybody comes across that, please let me know. But it was either 99, 2000. No, it wasn't 2000. So it had to be 98 or 99. 98 or 99. But yeah, I made the front page of the Cleveland Plain Dealer newspaper. But I will talk about that on the next video because I feel like I've gone over here. It's already 50 minutes in. So I apologize for being late with the videos, and I will try to keep them coming and keep them more consistent. But like I said, life got to me, and I just got distracted and lost focus on making the videos. And I do have my own health problems, or mental health problems, I should say. So that also prevents me from being active and being talkative and social and wanting to, try to help people. But they're mental health problems. But at the end of the day, they're not mental health problems. They're demons. That's exactly what they are. These are my demons, and they will go. They will get out. I will be set free from them. No doubt about that. But sometimes some things in life we just experience things, and it is what it is. Just being honest, just being me. But that's why you got to keep going to church. You got to keep the demons at bay, keep them away. They are not. They are not meant to be a part of us. They're invading. They're breaking into your house. Basically, they were like me when I was a teenager. They break into a house, but they don't live in that house. So I will try to stay consistent and stay updates. Keep the updates with my videos. But my apologies for being so late. But have a good day, and I'll be back. This is IamUgie.